Hello folks, Scott here with my 10 cards, 1 kit video featuring the Love from Lizi February 2020 card kit. As usual, I do take the 5 card stocks provided with our kit and I cut them down into A2 card bases. So we've got 2 pinks, 2 greens, 2 blues, 2 reds, and 2 whites. Now when I posted the unboxing of this kit, I got a comment from Judy Brown that said, "Challenge Scott, make a completely pink card for me." Now, I didn't think it would be very hard with this kit, so I rose to the challenge. Our first card on a pink card base is a Valentine's card. Happy Valentine's Day, featuring one of those great decoupage assemblies from this kit. Happy Valentine's Day just for you. Inside we've got "You Are So Loved." That is one of the stamps from our gigantic stamp set. I took a piece of that pink pattern paper, cut that down to 4 inches wide, and then used a border punch to punch this little scallop heart border on the edges, and then glued that down to my pink card base. This is the Just For You decoupage heart. That's all 5 layers from that decoupage sheet, all assembled with the included foam squares. Nice and thick there. Of course, I didn't think there was enough dimensions, so I mounted that whole heart to the card front with some foam tape behind that as well. I did stamp this Happy Valentine's Day sentiment. This is from the Hero Arts My Monthly Hero January of 19 kit. That stamp is Happy Valentine's Day. I stamped that with Versamark ink and embossed that with some Love from Lizi copper glitz embossing powder. I thought that had a nice sense of pink to it, and it was still dark enough to be able to read. Happy Valentine's Day. The sparkle on that sentiment matches all of the sparkle and glitter on that heart. This is probably a little thick to actually send through the mail unless it's in a little box, but I love the dimension that those decoupage sheets give us. Just for you, Happy Valentine's Day. I stamped the sentiment on the inside of this card using Worn Lipstick Distress Oxide ink. We've got to keep everything pink for Judy this month. That's my all pink Valentine card. This one's for you, Judy. Now, of course, the highlight of this kit is this gigantic 8.5 by 11 inch stamp set that features this great 6 inch by 6 inch background stamp. I had to dig in and color that. I did stamp that on some Bristol Smooth cardstock using some VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I did emboss that with some clear embossing powder, and then I took my King Art dual tip brush pens to this to color this. These are some nice, inexpensive watercolor brush pens. I got these for Christmas a year ago from my sister-in-law. Thank you, Alice. I thought I would use these since they gave me such a wide variety of colors. I have 48 pens in this set. I know some people will look at this stamp and feel intimidated at the thought of coloring something like this, but it was actually fairly simple. I just colored all of the leaves first. Anything that looked like a leaf, I colored it green. Once all the leaves are colored, then the flowers become more apparent, and I colored all of the similar flowers in similar ways and completed this whole panel. Of course, it did take me a couple of hours to color this panel, but I do really enjoy turning on some music and playing with my colors and just zenning out on a lovely stamp like this. So let's make a card with that. On a green card base, we have, "If friends were flowers, I'd pick you." Isn't that great? I really love that embossing. That stamp gives it such a great shine. I swear it looks like the entire panel is shiny. Really nice. I used a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, of course, to cut out my preferred section of that 6 by 6 inch background. I matted that on a thin white mat, glued that down to our green card base. Then I turned to my Silhouette software to create this sentiment. This is the Lucida Grand font. I just printed that on a scrap of white cardstock. I actually tried printing that up in black white on black also, but I didn't think that read quite as well as the black on white. And we've got the white flowers there to match that white sentiment. If friends were flowers, I'd pick you. This is not particularly what you would expect from this card kit. The colors are so bright. I love the shine. I can't wait to send this card to someone special. Okay, my coloring mojo is still going strong, so I thought I would tackle some of those other stamps in the set. On our mid-blue card base, we've got You're Lovely, featuring that larger flower arrangement. Now, I did stamp that again using VersaFine Onyx Black ink on some Bristol Smooth cardstock. I did, of course, emboss that again with my clear embossing powder, and I reached for my Zig Clean color markers to color this. I wanted this to be my blue card. I die cut a piece of that blue gingham pattern paper from our pattern paper pack with one of my Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle dies. I matted that on a thin mat of black tie glitter paper. I really like that black tie glitter paper. It's not totally coated with glitter, but it has some really nice colorful glitter pieces in there, not all one color. Once I matted those two pieces together, I took some of our peel-offs from the kit and I created a frame around that gingham piece. I took another piece of that glitter cardstock and cut it to 3/4 inches by 3 3/4 inches wide, and I wrapped a piece of that blue flower ribbon around the center of that, glued that down to our card front. I added a couple more peel-offs on the top and bottom of that, and then I added the You're Lovely sentiment sticker from our kit right to the center there. I did fussy cut this out. I know I'm crazy, but I love to fussy cut. I attached that arrangement to this card front using some plain foam squares, and then finally used our Blue Babe Nouveau crystal drops to add a number of drops of embellishment around this card. This is our lovely Study in Blue. You're Lovely, just a writing surface on the inside. I think this card is kind of lovely. I've still got my colors out, and we have another smaller little arrangement in our stamp set. So on our red card base, we've got You Are a True Miracle. More shine, more glitter, more glitz. This is my study in red. I did stamp and emboss and color this arrangement the same as I did the little blue arrangement there. And yes, of course, I went in and fussy cut that all out. I took a piece of my plain black cardstock, die cut that with a smaller Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die. I mounted that on a piece of red glitter cardstock, glued those both to my red card base. Now this piece is actually one of the wood veneer die cuts in our embellishment bag. Now I turned that around and coated the back of that with my multimedia matte glue and let that dry. I wanted to seal the wood before I started stamping on it. Once that was dry, I took my archival ink in vermilion and colored the top of that stamp nice and red. That red goes with that cardstock so perfectly. Once that was dry, I stamped the sentiment on top of that using VersaFine Onyx Black ink, embossed that with some clear embossing powder for a little shine there. You can see that. You Are a True Miracle. I attached that tag and the little flower on this card front using some foam tape. I added a double bow on top of this tag and finally added a few red pearls for a little embellishment on this. You Are a True Miracle. That's my study in red, just a writing surface on the inside. Love those stamps. Okay, that has satisfied my coloring mojo, at least for the time being. So let's get back to those decoupage sheets. I always love Lizi's decoupage sheets. On a white card base, we've got For a Special Friend. That is from our decoupage sheets. These are layers 2 and 4, and the extra sentiment from this sheet, I wanted to try and keep the dimension a little bit more constrained on this. This card would go through the mail in an envelope. This is a 2-inch piece of that blue stripe pattern paper glued down to the middle of this card, outlined with the peel-offs from our kit and some extra peel-offs added to the top and bottom spaces. I assembled our decoupage piece right in the middle of that using some thin foam squares. The foam squares included in our kit are pretty thick, so I jumped to some of my standard foam squares just to keep this from getting too thick and two-dimensional. Now, I did go in and cut away the little extra borders where that leaf was on these top flowers, so I would expose the complete leaf underneath. For a special friend, a few Nouveau drops for added shine and a little bit of dimension. For a special friend, using our decoupage sheets. Okay, that brings us back to our other pink card base. I tell you, it's hard to not make a pink card when you have a pink card base. But for my next card, we've got a Thinking About You card with all sorts of pink and red roses, lots of sequins on this. Thinking about you and wish you were here. This feels like a card specifically made for my grandmother or for anybody who really likes roses. Now, I took my new Hero Arts Oval Infinity dies and I die cut this rose pattern paper from our card kit and a little frame using the 2 biggest dies from that. Now, I do find it easier to cut the matte frame as a frame, use 2 dies for that, instead of trying to cut the inner and then cut the outer separately and then glue them together and get them lined up perfectly. I think this helps create a frame around an oval without fussing too much with getting them glued together exactly in the right position. That's what I did for that one. I stamped the sentiment in the middle of that using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I did emboss that using some clear embossing powder. And then I grabbed the 2 wood veneer roses from our embellishment bag, attach those to 2 sides of that oval using some foam tape. I added lots of sequins from our sequin mix. I did play around with different arrangements and less sequins and more sequins, and finally decided that this card would certainly support a whole bunch of sequins all around its edges. There's a few of the little tiny sequins around our sentiment right there in the middle. A thinking of you lovely rose pink card. Wish you were here. This is stamped, of course, in VersaFine Onyx Black ink on the inside. You know, I tried to use all of the stamps in a stamp set, so I am doubling up a couple of these sentiments here and there whenever I find it appropriate. Now, not only did our stamp set have this great big background stamp and a number of smaller arrangements, but we also had 14 individual little flower and leaf pieces. So I thought I might try and use all of those on one card. On a green card base, we've got You Are My Happy Place. This is my 1-layer wonder. You Are My Happy Place. I stamped all 14 of those individual flower and leaf stamps on the side there. I did practice a few times with this arrangement, just using some scrap paper, and came up with this lovely grouping on the left side here. I stamped those using Archival Ink Emerald Green ink. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with this, so I thought it was best to go ahead and stamp that with some permanent ink. I then took some light gray alcohol markers and outlined all of those flowers and leaves, gave them a little shadow behind there, kind of faded it out towards the card. That didn't quite give me the contrast that I was looking for, so I grabbed my white colored pencil and I colored all those flowers very lightly, and I took care to avoid the stamp lines. I also left some of the original green card seeable through portions of those flowers. That was what I was looking for. Very pleased with that look. I stamped this sentiment using Hero Art's Unicorn Pigment ink, a white sentiment that I achieved on a green card base without using any white embossing powder. For the final touch on this, I took some of the Lizi Mint Sparkle peel-offs, and I created a little 3/4 frame around this, lining the edges of the card with those thin peel-offs. You are my happy place, just a writing surface on the inside of the card. My one-layer wonder, all green, very peaceful, very tranquil, very green. Now we had that one sentiment stamp in our stamp set that said storms never last forever, and I was at a little bit of a loss in figuring out how to use that sentiment. We didn't have any real storm stamps or cloud stamps or rain stamps or anything, so I figured, why not try some sunbeams? So we've got storms never last forever on our blue card base. I think that's really nice. I think that gives a really good sense that a storm has passed and the sun is coming out. Now I took some 1/2-inch washi tape that I had and masked out a 1/2-inch border all the way around this card front. Then I used some smaller pieces to mask out these 2 little sunbeams. And I used the Hero Arts Unicorn ink again and one of my Tim Holtz Distress brushes to ink in our sunbeams through that mask. Now this is my one brush that I have dedicated solely to white ink. I know we haven't seen these for a while. I still use them. I still think they're valuable. They worked really good with that unicorn pigment ink. I let everything dry very well, and then I peeled off the masking from the beams, and I added some silver peel-offs, silver Love from Lizi peel-offs, along the 2 edges for a little partial frame. I just followed along the edges of my masked frame around it before I peeled that up, so that got perfect placement for those. Now, I know a lot of people who don't want to color such an intricate stamp are going to be using these stamps to emboss with on colored cardstock. So I thought I'd take that smallest arrangement that we have and see how that embossed. I embossed that with some Love from Lizi Golden Coin embossing powder, used my Versamark ink, and that embossed really very nicely. I love silver on white. I, of course, fussy cut that little stamp out once it was embossed, added it to this card front with some foam tape. I stamped the sentiment up left here using some Faded Jeans Distress Oxide ink, and of course added some more Nouveau Crystal Drops for a little shine and sparkle around our sentiment and our flowers. Storms never last forever. The sun is coming out. Just a writing surface on the inside. Now, believe it or not, I have actually used all the stamps in the stamp set on these 8 cards. I got a little bit ahead of myself, I think. But I was really excited to try this watering can die that came in our embellishment bag as one of our dies this month. On a white card base, we've got that lovely watering can vignette right on the front here. Oh, so very nice. I really like that watering can. Now what I did was I die cut this watering can twice from some medium gray cardstock from my stash. Then I cut the flowers off of one of those die cuts and glued them together, so the can itself is a double layer of gray cardstock. There's only a single layer of gray flowers in the back. I did die cut the flowers one more time from some alcohol-friendly cardstock, colored those with my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers, and then paper pieced them on top of the gray flowers right there. I folded the handle forward, I folded the spout forward right where they meet the can, and then I curved that can a little bit. So there's a little bit of curvy dimension. You can see that. Now I took that blue rose tile pattern paper and I I cut a diamond out of that, just following along with the lines of the pattern paper. I matted that on a thin gray mat. That's the same gray as this watering can. I die cut a piece of that blue pattern paper with a smaller lawn fawn stitched rectangle die. I matted that to a darker gray thin mat and then matted those to a wider mat of that reddish rain pattern paper. I glued all of those down to this card front, and then I attached that diamond piece on top with some foam tape. Then I glued my watering can to the top of that. There's a strip of foam tape down the center there. The edges of the can are glued down to the card. The handle and the spout are popped up with a little piece of foam tape, as is that center flower on the top. Some really nice dimension there. I liked this little vignette so much I couldn't bring myself to add any kind of a sentiment on the front. You know, that's not very like me. I almost always put a sentiment on the front, but I did bring one to the inside, and we've got "You Help Me Grow." Really nice sentiment. I thought that went really, really well with a watering can. I did use my Silhouette software to create that sentiment. I used the Arial font and the Mona Lisa solid font for the Grow to print this on the inside of my card. A really nice multiple use sentiment, I think. This has kind of an old-fashioned, old-timey, almost something you'd see on the side of a fruit crate or something. I really like that watering can die. You Help Me Grow. That's our watering can from our kit this month. Now, I still have more of my colored background stamp that I didn't use on this card, and I was certainly not going to let it go to waste. So for our last card this month, a congrats card using more of that background stamp that I added to the front here. This is a 2-inch wide piece of that colored background stamp. I attached that to more of my black tie glitter cardstock and glued those down to the front of this red card base. I added some thin little strips of purple cardstock from my stash. I cut a 1/4-inch strip of that purple cardstock to go across the bottom here under the sentiment. I did die cut that sentiment from that purple pattern paper 4 more times, glued those all together, and then top that off with another die cut using the black tie glitter cardstock. This is the Scripty Congrats die from Lawn Fawn. And again, this card has got some lovely shine, some lovely sparkle. Congrats, lots of color. I like the purple and the red playing off each other here. Now, it wasn't easy, again, to come up with puns for a card kit like this, but we've got one here for you on this last card. Congrats, you bloom me away. You bloom me away. Congrats, you bloom me away. A really nice, fun card. I love that red cardstock, and I think it plays with the purple really nicely. Again, that embossing on those stamps makes the whole thing feel shiny and sparkly. Congrats! Now, I actually did have one last little strip of that background stamp still colored, and I wasn't about to let it go to waste, so I did a little Christy Marcotte on this first card, and I added that last little strip on the inside of this card. At the bottom of the writing surface, there's that last piece of colored cardstock. Works very nicely there. Thanks for the idea, Christy. Ultimately, I only have these 2 little thin slivers left from that colored background stamp. I used every bit I possibly could, and that makes me very, very happy. Now, I did, believe it or not, actually use every single stamp in this stamp set. I thought that was a huge accomplishment in itself. I got those all used on the first 8 cards. Love this stamp set. I actually used 6 of our 12 pattern papers. I used 2 of our decoupage sheets, so I've got lots more decoupage sheets to play with. I used all of the cardstock except for the 2 extra pieces of super smooth alcohol-friendly cardstock I used a good amount of our peel-offs, and I used a little bit of everything from our embellishment bag. I did use some of the foam squares. I used one of the sentiment stickers. I only used one of the ribbons from our ribbon pack. This will go in my stash. I used some of the sequins. I used 3 of the wood veneer die cuts. I used one of the dies, and of course, a good amount of our Nouveau Blue Babe crystal drops. I did have a great time putting all of these cards together. I really enjoy coloring those stamps. If you use those stamps just for embossing, they are gorgeous as well. Unfortunately, this set has sold out. I just missed those last few kits going. But I tell you, if you'd like to get in on the Love from Lizi fun, I recommend becoming a subscriber. Most of Lizi's kits do sell out. Lizi's kits are very unique and usually overloaded with fun, crafty supplies. I would suggest becoming a subscriber if you don't want to miss out on such a fun kit like this. Of course, if you do go shopping at Love from Lizi, please use my links in the description down below. It is always hugely appreciated. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me here. You are the ones who keep me inspired and keep me crafting. My YouTube channel is almost at 5,000 subscribers. We will do some kind of a celebration and possibly a giveaway, so keep your eyes open for that. Please remember to like me, list me, pin me, post me, share me with all of your friends. Don't run with scissors. And as always, happy crafting. If you'd like more detailed information, better pictures, and product links, please visit my website at CardCutups.com.